Welcome, everyone. On behalf of everyone at Equities.com, I'm Silvia, Davi, Chief Marketing Officer, and I'd like to thank this roundtable. We'll be focusing on women's issues. Just by way of background, I wanted to highlight what Equities Women's Council is all about. It's a fairly new community that Equities launched this year to empower and bring together ambassadors that will highlight gender equality issues. The community was kicked off earlier this year in Los Angeles, where we held a very similar roundtable discussion. And the goal is for us to cover and bring to light women's issues that encompass women in corporate America, entrepreneurs, venture capital, and a number of other key areas and sectors. By way of background, I do want to highlight a little bit more about Equities.com for those that are not as familiar with the platform. Equities.com is a financial news and media company and an investor community. The focus of Equities.com is to bring to light emerging growth trends and themes across a number of different sectors. It also is an investor community because it's visited regularly by a number of self-directed investors that are actively looking for emerging trends, new businesses, companies that are fast-growing, and it's a fantastic community that brings together some of the biggest disruptors across a number of different sectors. The concept behind the council was to disrupt in the world of women's issues. And so we're gathered here today with a fabulous panel that will bring to light some of their experiences and some of their terrific work focused on women's effort and gender equality. But before I introduce our very distinguished panel, I do want to take some time to thank our very distinguished hosts, which is Alvarez and Marcel. And I know a lot of you have met Victoria and Julianne and a few of the other ladies that are here. It's a global professional services firm that believes very strongly in empowering women, and so they were the fantastic hosts for today's roundtable and breakfast, so thank you. And also, in particular, the Transaction Advisory Group that is hosting it. Again, we thank you for your support today. I'd also like to recognize our webinar host, Onstream Media, and we will be opening up the discussion in the roundtable at the end for some Q&A, and also to the folks on the phone if there's any question on the webinar. But to start, I just would like to introduce you to our panel. Again, we're going to highlight a couple of themes, and then we're going to take some Q&A. But if you ask questions, I do ask you to identify your affiliation and your name. So with that, I'm going to turn over first to introduce Kristy Wallace, president of the Ellevate network. As president, she's responsible for their mission to close the gender achievement gap in business by providing professional women with a global community to lean on and to learn from. She works alongside founder of Ellevate, Valley Krawcheck, who most of you may have heard of, is one of the most successful and influential women in financial services and in Wall Street. Kristy has had 20 years of experience in generating revenue centers, marketing, pipeline development, and business operations. And prior to Ellevate, Kristy was VP of North America Ad Sales, GM of International Operations at Vault.com, and then a founding member of Zeal.com. So thank you, Kristy. Angelica Fuentes, Angelica, is founder of Angelica Fuentes Foundation, which was started and established in 2014, is a philanthropic culmination of her lifelong commitment and dedication to women. Through the work of the foundation, she's furthering her mission to create a world in which women will further their mission, girls' education, health services, and economic opportunities. She is also the founder of the Imperative Fund, which is an organization that lifts communities out of poverty in 5 years or fewer globally. And recently, very exciting news, she launched a gender equality fund, which I'm sure she'll touch on. But prior to that, Angelica's had a fantastic career as CEO of a number of companies, starting at the age of 29 with the Mexican energy company Grupo Imperial, followed by OmniLife, Angelissima, and even having spearheaded a Mexican soccer team in Chivas. So very diverse woman. I would like to also introduce Wendy Diamond, who is founder of the Women's Entrepreneur Day organization, another fantastic woman, a social entrepreneur, a humanitarian. She's also a best-selling author. She's a television personality, and she's an endangered animal and rescue advocate. Wendy revolutionized the pet industry by creating premier pop culture benefits to endorse animal adoption, advocacy, and fundraising. 2 years ago, she launched the Women's Entrepreneurship Day at the United Nations, which is coming up on November 18th. It's in 144 countries, and its sole purpose is to empower and to support women in business. So please join me, everyone, in welcoming our fantastic So I'd like to start off the discussion by having each of you highlight and give an overview of your organizations and some of the initiatives that you're all personally spearheading to support women's efforts.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think this is an incredibly important topic, something very near and dear to my heart. And it's great to see so many faces in the room, especially some Ellevate faces and members of our community. So I appreciate all of you coming here today to support this and to be a part of the conversation. But Ellevate is a global professional women's network. We strongly believe that your next opportunity will come through who you know. So the person who will connect you to that board opportunity, who will mentor you through asking for the raise, who will provide you guidance or support when you're starting your business, that's all through the network that you have. Cultivating that network, connecting with that network on a regular basis, and also showcasing your successes to that network is very important. And that's really the foundation of Ellevate. So we're very much about connecting with 50,000 women in our community. We have 500 events a year. We host over 100 webinars where women are sharing their insights and expertise. And we do a lot to celebrate the community through our podcasts, our social media channels, through our partnerships with Huffington Post and Forbes. And so for Ellevate, we're closing the gender achievement gap in business really through the power of networking, community, and support.
Thank you. I have been participating in different industries as Silvia mentioned a little while ago. One of the most important things is what I chose to do a little over 19 months ago, which is recreate myself, start something different, always in the exact same sector, which has to do basically, and the love of my work is working with women at the base of the income pyramid, and that's a little over almost 30 years now. And one of the things that we're finalizing is a project that is called GEF, Gender Equality Fund, where we're going to link the top of the business corporate sector with the women at the base of the income pyramid to further gender equality and women's economic empowerment. And we're going to do so by bundling and investing in publicly traded companies in the United States with a bias of that have, the important thing about this is that these companies either have best or improving practices of gender equality and women's economic empowerment, both internally and externally. And by doing that, we're going to have a bias on capital preservation as our investment strategy because of the second part of the fund, which has to do with, by the performance of the fund, we're going to subsidize infrastructure to allow women at the base of the income pyramid, both in the United States and abroad, that have little or no access to financial institutions and financial literacy, because that's a big issue with these women, overcome barriers as well on transaction costs as micro-investors. So we're going to have a pool of micro-investors investing in publicly traded companies in the United States, and for the first time in their lives, having the possibility of capital market returns. And with that, we're also going to do away with the social paradigm that women at the base of the income pyramid have, especially in developing countries, where you have the haves and the do not have to way on the bottom with a huge gap, by allowing them to really feel empowered and feel that they're worth something. When they know that maybe they won't be resentful when they walk by a Louis Vuitton store, if it's something that we choose to listen, for example. And, you know, do away with that by knowing that, hey, that's great that all those people are walking in there. She might never walk in there to buy an $800,000 purse. She knows that she owns part of the company and part of it, of that store. And she will be glad for them to walk in there and purchase. She knows that it's good for her investment. Or maybe going to the Esquina, El Changarrito de la Esquina, which is the corner store, and maybe buying a can of Nestle, knowing that she is one of the, you know, investors in that company, and she is providing to get better returns. So that is the project that we've been working on for almost 14 months now, and it's going to come to life hopefully by November.
Fantastic. Wendy? Okay. I'm Wendy. My background is I learned that 12 million animals were euthanized a year in '99, so I launched a media company called Animal Fair and brought celebrities and pop culture to the animal rescue world. New York Times, Forbes, Fox, everybody basically said that that is the reason why in our company that you see animals today, and that number's down to 4 million, 10 books out, 5 TV shows, 3 Guinness World Records. And 3 years ago, I ended up, I'm a traveler. When my father passed away, I committed to going to 2 new countries a year. I ended up in Honduras on vacation. I didn't realize when I booked it, it was the murder capital of the world. And no one would go with me, but I booked it, so I was like, I'm going. And when I went there, I was at a hotel, a boutique hotel in the jungle, because I help animals. I work with the most wealthiest people in the world to fund endangered animal programs all over the world. And so, I was there, and the guy at the hotel said, hey, there's an organization that gives microloans to poor women. You'd love it. I'm like, microloans? What the heck's that? And I'm like, he's like, it's safe. Just go. You'll love it. The development director will pick you up. You could see Honduras, blah, blah, blah. I get there. I'm like, man, $1 is a lot. These people were making like 50 cents a day, and it was just the most impoverished community I've ever seen. And I've been in Africa and a lot of places. This was bad. And I just was so inspired by these women. They got $100. And for instance, I'll give you one little story. This grandmother, 72 years old, her daughter died. The son ran off with some other girl, left her with 3 kids, and she had no money. And she got this $120 loan from this organization called Adelante, and literally was able to open up a little pulperia. And through that, she was able to put her kids through school and provide for the family. And what I learned through that is I learned all the statistics of women. And kind of what I learned in the animal world is if you simplify the message, everybody in the world wants to help. If you make it really easy for them, they'll do it. But nothing happens from the top down. It happens from the ground up. So you've got to inspire everybody, right? So I just decided that I came back to New York and I decided, well, I'll create a day in the world, because if we create a day, then everyone will start talking about it, right? So I got Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio to proclaim the day, so it's an official day in the world, and it's called Women's Entrepreneurship Day. It's celebrated on November 19th all over the world. Then I went and I said, oh, TED is so inspiring, right? God, everybody's doing it, everyone respects it. So I said, let's call on everyone we know around the world, and let's make them ambassadors of this movement in their country. So I called on, and my background is, I ended up going to school with a lot of people from all over the world. I'm from a little town in Ohio, by the way. I'm a total country bumpkin. So anyway, fast forward, I really am, by the way. But anyways, 2,500 people. So I ended up calling, all these people. So we got 3 royal families behind this. We've got, some of the most powerful people in the entire world. And we asked them, who's the greatest person in your country to represent our movement? And so we are in 144 countries. Everywhere from Sri Lanka to the royal family of Saudi Arabia, the Al Sauds, to the King of Jordan, November 6th. All of my Middle Eastern, North African ambassadors are meeting in Jordan. They're proclaiming the day. And so Jordan will be the first country to proclaim the day. I couldn't get President Obama to do it. Anyways, I will. Well, he'll regret it. Anyways, Hillary will do it. Anyways, fast forward. Our third one, we do our event in New York, and this year we've got the royal family of Silvia coming, to Mindy Grossman from Home Shopping Network, to Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank filming it. And we're launching this year on November 30th. And we're not, we don't compete with anyone. We're just everybody should celebrate themselves on this day and this movement and promote what they're doing in life and the whole thing. And November 30th, we're launching Choose Women, and it's the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, and we're asking everyone to support a woman-owned business. And what we're doing is we're creating a portal. It's called choosewomen.org. So you know how there's Small Business Saturday? And there's Giving Tuesday. Well, now it's no one took Wednesday, so why not, right? So anyways, we're launching choosewomen.org. It's going to be a directory of women-owned businesses. We've already got like 60 businesses signed up. Anytime you shop through this portal, it doesn't cost you any extra money. Percentage of that money will fund impoverished women with microloans. And, you know, so that's our thing. And then we work with a lot of like the, you know, people that like invest in how we fund our movement is through people that fund, you know, that invest in companies that we work with. So anyways, that's my thing.
This is a fantastic overview. Thank you, ladies. I'd like to just dive a little bit deeper into what actually motivated the three of you to focus on gender equality in very different ways and realms. If there's any interesting industry developments that you may have observed, statistics that you want to share for the roundtable that may be very surprising. There's a few I know that many of us have encountered that are still surprising in this day and age. But if you could just take us through that and maybe also some success stories that you may have started to see, if any. Kristy?
Sure. Well, so I am a woman. That's a big part of it. And I started out my career, as probably many here in investment banking, as you will, and was the only woman in the office, which was interesting and very interesting, particularly at a young age. And so that actually wasn't what bothered me the most, but I felt I wanted to have an impact, and I wanted to do something in the business, and it was just not the right culture for that. So I moved to a startup called Vault.com, which is a career media company. And during my time at Vault, I was one of the only women on the senior leadership team. We did have a successful exit, but we worked very closely with companies on their recruiting efforts. And a big part of that was diversity and wanting to recruit diverse candidates. What I heard time and time again was, well, we want to hire diverse candidates, but they should only go to this school, and they should only look this way, and they should only have this degree. And to me, that's not diversity, right? You're putting a label on something which it is not. And so during that time, we didn't see a huge movement in the diversity statistics. Every year, we were putting out data and reports around the diversity makeup of many large companies, and we weren't seeing a change. And so after I left Vault, I went to Ellevate because I really want to be a part of that change. Something very near and dear to my heart is how do we work with companies closely to help recruit and retain and engage women within their organizations, create cultures that are conducive to a very inclusive environment. And how do we work with women individually to support each other in getting ahead in business? And that's been a big part of my life. Every job that I've ever received has been through my network. It's been through the women that are supporting me, that are connecting me to opportunities. It's a very long-term game. So I think as the nature of networking is evolving, it's very important that we know how to play that game. It's long-term. It's not the person necessarily that you meet today. It's that person that you worked with 5 years ago who's going to come back and say, oh, I heard of this great opportunity and I thought of you. Or someone that you get a job in a new industry and you can look to people in your network that can help you quickly assimilate into that industry or get the insights and the knowledge. Or the person, when you start your business, you can tap into for your PR or your marketing. So it's really around that support network. And in order to leverage that network, you need to constantly be cultivating it. It's a big part of what I've spent a lot of time thinking about over the past couple of months is how do we have a voice? How do we constantly on social media, it's very easy to kind of sit there and watch what's going on, but how do we be a part and engage in that conversation? So after this event today, tweet or on LinkedIn or Facebook, share something you learned. Connect with the people you met in this room and welcome them and start a conversation and keep that conversation going. I think that that's very important. I think it's also important to celebrate the women in your network online and publicly, so share their successes, celebrate it. If you see that they're speaking at an event or they published an article, share that. And then cultivate your personal brand. So your brand, what people say about you when you're not in the room. What do you want them to say? How do you want to be known? And that's going to be a big part of how you grow your network, is when an opportunity comes up, they'll say, oh, you know what? She's great at PR. You should talk to her. She'd be a great person to talk to. But in order for people to always think of you that way, what you want to be writing about, what you want to be talking about, how you want to be putting yourself out there in conversations. So I think of, the future of women in business is around the women in this table, the connections we're making, the conversations we're having, how we're keeping it going, and how we're putting ourselves out there in a way that we want to be seen.
Fantastic. Angelica?
Part of that story, I think it has to do with the place that I come from. I'm Mexican. I come from a very traditional family, a family that's been involved in the energy sector for very many years. I started working when I was 11 years old at a gas station of one of my families. And there, for the first time, without realizing it, I found out that I had a voice and that I had to, make it heard, and that nobody was going to defend anything for me, that I needed to defend whatever I chose for, because working at this gas station, I never got a tip. So the first time I asked was like after 2 weeks of getting the courage to do so, and the man said, because you're a woman. I said, well, why do you make a difference? So there from then on, they started tipping me, but I realized there, without realizing it up here, that I had a voice. My family, as I said, is very traditional. Just so you'll know, my dad, when my older sister and I graduated from primary school, which in Mexico is 6th grade, he said, well, I don't think they need to go to school anymore. They're going to eventually get married, and that's about all they need. And my family is, pretty established family, and my father had those thoughts. Of course, this is many years ago. This was over 48 years ago. And my mom, very intelligently, said, no, let the girls go to school. So we ended up going to middle school, high school, and finally graduating from college. But that's the mentality that I came from. So my father still today, he's 81 years old. He just got very, one of my nieces just got very upset at him because she finished a marathon while making incredible time. And my dad says, well, when are you going to go home and cook? To my father, there's three things that a woman should do. And to most Latino men today, you either should be one of three things. A daughter, if you're lucky enough, a wife, and if you're really lucky and you want to be respected by society, then a mother or somebody. And that's a paradigm that we need to change, and that's something that I chose to change. I, was part of the energy sector for about 20 years. Till today, the energy sector is controlled basically by men. And I chose right then and there that I should not compete against any men ever, or women for that matter. The only person that I needed to compete with was me, in order for me to get ahead and to prove what I could do. And there's one thing that as women we have to understand, sadly still today, 2016, is that we have to prove ourselves twice. First, we have to prove that we are talented and that we have skills. Secondly, we have to overcome obstacles just because we are women in the workforce. And the faster we understand that, the faster we're going to grow. One of the things that I found that was very important was that I understood that we needed to cooperate with men in order to get anything passed through. So women cannot do it alone. I don't work with women because I'm a woman. I work with women because there is such a huge gap in social, economic, political, all kinds of aspects in life. The gap is way broader than it is with men, and I work with women to bring them to that middle just with men, not for the benefit of women only, but for the benefit of society, and that's one of the things that we need to understand. And with that, let me tell you a little of some statistics that are put out by the World Economic Forum. I'm a co-chair of the Gender Parity Task Force there. And it's just appalling to me, some of the statistics that we still live. In economic participation in the world, 6 women to 10 men. Political, 2 women to 10 men. The women in the labor force are 1.5 billion. This is in 2006. 2015, a decade later, 1.7. Haven't really grown that much, 1.5 to 1.7, 1 decade. Global average woman, 2006. Sorry, I don't have my glasses. 6,000, 2006, 6,000 for women, 11,000 for men. A decade later, women, 11,000. Took us a decade to make the same as men, but men, 21,000. Access to advancement in education, university degree pretty much were the same. Women in skilled jobs, 2015, 75% versus men, but we've only advanced 2% in a decade, from 73 to 75. Women in leadership roles, 2006, 26%. 10 years later, 28%. We've only advanced 2%. Political participation is up to 50% of countries have had a female head of state. Hopefully we'll increase one more, as you said. Very important countries, very powerful. 19% of women in parliament and 18 in ministry secretary positions within the government. There is still so much to work for. It's amazing to me that the four things that, that we advanced, yes, but we've advanced that much. And if we don't understand, because I've seen it, that we need to cooperate with one another in order to really advance, we're going to take those 81 years to come to that parity that we deserve in our future generations. So that's a little bit, and that's another huge reason I work on these issues that I love and are very close to my heart.
Thank you, Angelica, for those statistics. And just before turning it over to Wendy and to add more perspective on some of those stats, because we're here in a corporation, a professional services firm, I just want to highlight, this is according to Catalyst.org, that there's only 4% of women that currently hold CEO roles in S&P 500 companies. And that's really sad. The other component to keep American progress, women hold 14% of executive office or positions in general. Women hold 16% of board seats. And that is pretty much what I feel is a big reason that is causing a lot of the problems in terms of diversity. But with that, I do want to turn it over. Wendy, can I just start short? Just two other stats. In Latin America, only 3% of women hold executive positions. And around 6%, at least in Mexico, are on board. Most of them from companies that are based in Mexico but that are U.S. born.
Wendy, you have a global perspective as well. What do you have to add?
Great.
Okay, so, what inspired me, I think, when, going back to, the animal world, when I learned 12 million animals are euthanized, and you could get, any dog, any breed, any size, and adopt, and not pay for one and save a life, I was like, wow, right? And knowing what we were able to do with that, and learning about that there are 250 million girls living in poverty, 1 out of 3 women in America, right here, live in poverty, and knowing that women pay back their loans at a 98.7% rate of those microloans, and learning just about that alone made me say, wow, we really have to create a simplified movement that we all can be a part of, that everybody can understand. Because once you bring those statistics in, people are like, what? 1 out of 3 women in America? And then they start thinking, right? And that's where you bring in the conversation of what you were just speaking about, and about how, when a woman's on a board, they're boards, and I don't have to who said this, but I know it's true. I didn't do it all. Anyways, when women are on boards, they're 30% more profitable, the companies, right? And 7% of venture dollars go towards women-owned businesses. So when you look at that and you bring that number of 1 out of 3 women in America, and then you bring those other numbers, it all starts making sense, and everyone's like, whoa, wait, we need to empower women in business. And that's, kind of the basis for what we're all about and so forth. Is that enough? No, that's that's perfect. Thank you. I'd love to get advice from each of you, some tips, words of wisdom that you could share to women that may be starting their own businesses or that are in a corporate role and are feeling as if they're really hitting a ceiling. It's a lot of what we say, and it's what, in fact, has inspired many women to start their own businesses. In fact, the challenge then becomes they're not always the ones that are getting funded. The dollars are still going mainly to men. So what advice would you have to some women that are really facing those challenges from either side of that spectrum? Kristy.
So I have 4 pieces of advice. One, learn. Take every opportunity you can to learn. Learn the business, learn other industries, learn the markets, learn what you're doing. The more you know, the more powerful you are, the stronger you are. My husband, I actually have worked with him. He was our graphic designer at Vault, and I drove him nuts because I would constantly be at his desk being like, no, I think that it needs to look this way, and I think, I'll do it, I know how to do it. But it was because I cared about it and I knew how to do it. And then when I started my own business, I knew how to design and I knew these programs. And when we were relaunching our website, I could talk about back-end development. I'm not an expert. I like to say I'm not an expert in one thing. I'm pretty a generalist in many things. But as a business leader, particularly starting your own business, knowing a lot about many different things comes in handy to learn. And part of that learning is make lots of friends. In your company, become friends with people in different industries. That accountant is going to walk you through how to understand a balance sheet. If it's that designer who's going to talk to you about the design process. It's always important to have friends and to have diverse friends. If it's all just people in the same department, that's great. But knowing others in the company and being respectful of everyone goes a long way. Again, focus on your brand. I think that is so important. Growing up, I'm a twin, and my parents called my sister Mother Teresa, and they called me Leona Helmsley. And I was still in close whenever I went to college, and I called them, and I'm like, everyone thinks I'm nice here. But it's funny because my sister now is a special ed elementary ed teacher, and she pretty much is Mother Teresa. She's the greatest person I know, and I work in business. And so my parents, my family knew that from an early age. That was my brand without me realizing it. But now I've come to own it and to believe in it and to fight for it and come to cultivate that. And so really think about what you want to be known for. Talk to your personal board of advisors. Who are your friends? Who are the people you trust? Your boss, your colleague, your mentor. Ask their input on that. Does it make sense? Does it resonate? Is that how others see you? And own it. And own that in the workplace, because that's what people are going to say about you when you're not in the room. Is you want to have that brand within the workplace. And most importantly, have a voice. Right? We know that 53% of the women in the Ellevate community say they feel they have no voice in their company culture and policies as it pertains to women. So we don't speak up, and if we don't have a voice and we're not part of that conversation, then we're not influencing and impacting change. And if we really want to close the gender achievement gap in business, a big part of that is having women a part of that conversation, part of the solutions, and driving that change. Perfect. Angelica?
Well, some of the advice is, first and foremost, accept that you are a wonderful woman, and then believe in yourself. Believe in that wonderful being that's inside of you. Tap into it. Wake it up. Wake into your own power. A lot of women go through life giving their power to their dads and then their husbands and sometimes even their children. I see this a lot in America. Here, sometimes not as much. Get back. If you've given it to somebody, it's yours. For you to run with it. Have a plan and work very hard and with determination and very disciplined in your plan. Things don't come easy. You know, you got to work very hard at whatever it is that you do. Take risks. At least from where it comes from, women are not taught to take risks. Men are. Take risks. Men should risks, but take them. After you take a risk, it's okay if you fail. No, don't worry about failing. You know, society has told women that failure is unacceptable. It's okay if you fail once or twice or more times. Get up. Never change your dream. Change your strategy. Make your strategy be very flexible so you can, you know, weave it around whatever path it has to take you so you can reach that dream, so you can reach that finish line that you have for yourself. And, you know, Kristy pointed out a few things I also believe in very firmly. Network, and more network. With women, whenever you need support, they will be there. But with men as well. Have a mentor. It does not have to be a woman. It can be a man as well. Be open to that. What else can I give you as advice that I've taken it for myself? Learn. Perpetual learning is a must. I'm 53 years old. I'm still learning. I learn from my 3, my 6-year-old. I learn from, you know, women around me. I learn from incredible men like my partner here. I always learn. I always, get off a book. It doesn't have to be in business, and whatever it is. Just always be open to perpetual learning for your own growth. And I think that's, the advice that I would have for you.
Very well said. Wendy, and if you could also touch on what the goal is of the Entrepreneur Day for Women.
Okay. Be passionate with whatever you do. I mean, always have a day job so you can pay your bills, right? But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, just be so passionate about it. It doesn't matter what happens, you're going to do it. I always say to people, like, everything that happens in your life, whether it's a personal thing, a work thing, anything, it's a positive. You know, it might be like the most disastrous thing, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going through this. But there's a reason. You might know in a day, in a week, in 5 years why that happened, but look at everything as a positive, because you know what, we live one life, and you want to live a happy life, and it's a decision you have in your mind, right? And so I would say that, and be a glutton for punishment. You know what, get over it. Like, you know what I mean? Things suck, people suck, everybody, you know, but there's some good angels out there, and they're going to come into your life, accept them, but also appreciate those other people. Because you know what, it's like, no mountain is smooth. That's called a hill. You know what I mean? And so, and then all of what they said, and then I would say, you know, everybody in this world has to be an entrepreneur. The ones that work in companies are called entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? If you're not over-delivering, people remember you when you over-deliver. They completely forget when you under-deliver, right? So it's like always be proactive and excited, and always have like a dream, right? Because you have, you know, if you have a dream, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have a dream. So that's that. And then what the goal for Women's Entrepreneurship Day is basically we help this movement move forward. And we help everybody in the world understand why it's so important to empower women in business. And by, you know, bringing awareness to this day and what you guys are doing, and everybody in here about, you know, celebrating yourself and celebrating other women in your life, right? And like, you know, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, choose women. Who do you choose, right? Promote who you choose. Who inspired you? You know, it's a big, again, women need to support women, but, you know, I mean, I'll say in this movement, I probably shouldn't say it, but, like, men have been the most supportive, right? And it's like, women are like, wait a minute, we've been in an organization for 30 years. Like, why should you be doing this in 2 years? It's like, well, we're only trying to help you guys, you know. We're only trying to uplift the whole message, you know, for everyone. Not from, you know, just the top, but for everybody. Because if we don't support everyone and get everybody excited about this movement, there will be an 80-year gap. You know what I mean? Another 80 years.
So anyway, so that's perfect. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Wendy, because one of the objectives of the Equities Women's Council is to incorporate men over time. I'm glad there's some here. But I often say that in many of these women's organizations, the challenge is it's fantastic to have women speaking to women, but oftentimes men are not aware. Because there's a boys' club, and we need really to forge that women's club that was so ingrained, at least in corporate America or in startup environments, for the boys' club to exist. But we need to coexist. And I think as part of that, you know, one of the last questions I do want to point to the panel is that we all know that there are these gender-based stereotypes and differences. And so there was a McKinsey study that I want to point something out, but one thing I want to highlight, are women holding themselves back in some cases? Are there these self-fulfilling prophecies and stereotypes and labels that they're often putting out there? In this survey that we found, 4,000 employees at big companies were surveyed. 36% of the men said they want to be a CEO, while only 18% of women said the same. And so I am also fortunately a mom, and I'm very grateful to have a girl and a boy. And my daughter is the first of the two, and I am so happy that in her vocabulary she talks about what she wants. She wants to be a teacher. So I feel like I've been ingraining that message from corporate America. I haven't seen a few things, but I do want to, you know, turn around to you ladies to highlight, you know, is there some truth to that? Kristy.
Well, I think it's two things. I think one, you can't see what you don't see. So if you're not seeing women that are CEOs, then you see women as, you know, the VP, and you're like, well, one day I'd love to be a VP, because that's something I see. And so we need to change that ratio, and we need to believe that we can be whatever we want to be. I think we also need to change company cultures. So many women say, I don't want to be CEO because I have a family, I have other responsibilities, I have a life, and I can't dedicate 100% of myself to this job for 100% of my life till I get to that spot. We need to change the culture of companies so that it is more inclusive of work-life balance, of families, of the whole individual and the whole self. and knowing that if you have the time to work out, or if you have the time to go to your kid's soccer game, you're a happier employee, you're a more productive employee, and you're going to be doing more for that company and for yourself to move ahead.
Perfect. Angelica?
You know, I also think that words are very strong and they move people, but we need to lead by example. I totally agree with what Chris said. You know, example is so much more powerful. And the thing is that there is so much, you know, the bottleneck is so narrow once you go into the executive positions, especially to going up, that some women tend to want to hold on to that position without opening up themselves for sharing with other women. That's something that you just talked a little about. I agree. We need to get away from competing with one another and only competing with oneself and allowing others to come in to where we are. And if they pass out, that's fine, great. You know, you do it. We need to support one another. We need to do away with that negativity that if I can't get it, I don't want another woman to go out there. I also believe, and I want to put in other words about what companies have done, is companies have been created by men for men, and we're working in there. Companies need to be created by men and women for men and women. We have to have a lot more family-friendly policies, and it's not just good for women, it's good for men as well. And one of the things that I talk a lot about, this is in Latin America, and this is one of the things that I tell women on and on again. And I see it here in the United States not as much as I see it in Latin America, which is something that is a huge ill. It's called machismo. I'm sure you all have heard about the macho word. And I tell women, the ones who keep allowing that to happen are the women themselves. If they had had the power for hundreds of years to perpetuate that, by educating their children, boys and girls differently, by giving them different opportunities, by telling the boy you can take risks, you can't, by telling the boy it's okay for you to be ambitious, but girls cannot be ambitious because that's not a proper place for her. If they have the power to perpetuate that, they have the exact same power to overcome that, to do away with it, and to change that. That is so embedded in the cultural prejudice and in their own beliefs that, you know, we just need to take some time, but we need to talk about it. We need to put it out there as it is. And that's what I would say about that.
And watch your children.
Okay. Well, like, so, okay, you know, when thinking about this and you look at media, right, and kind of like, you know, I keep going back to this when I go back. It's like, you know, if you bring awareness towards it, right, and getting everyone to speak about it and getting, you know, pop culture and celebrities and et cetera, kind of like, you know, when you look at the animal rescue world and like that time, no one was talking about it. But if you start bringing it and everyone's starting to talk about it, I mean, I know when starting and researching this, I was like, wow, who knew a woman invented the dishwasher? I mean, come on. How happy are we, right? I mean, who knew, like, a woman invented the chocolate chip cookie? And you started realizing this stuff, and this is just not, people just don't talk about it. But the more we start talking about it, the media starts bringing it up into conversation, and we bring more awareness, this is when it's going to change. I mean, one of the funny things I have about guys who correct me, but, like, you know, like, if a guy gets in a fight with someone, you know, a fellow worker at lunch, by 5 o'clock, they're having a beer together, right? Women will never talk to each other again, right? And it's just, you got to change that mindset. It just goes back to, like, the playground and that time. And you just got to, like, again, simplify it so everybody realizes, you know, like, if you want gender equality, it's got to be, like, empowering women in business and the whole thing. Because when women are in business, they have self-confidence and dignity. They don't allow human rights violations. And we're really big in the Middle East and North Africa. But one thing I always say to people, and I know this is like going a little far-fetched, but I do believe it, is that if you empower women in business, what do they do with those children? They educate their children. 90% of that money educates their children. Those are less likely to become terrorists. So when you think about all the world issues, if we just empower women in business, we're done. It'll be great. We'll have no more poverty. There'll be no more human rights. There'll be no more terrorism. And that's my final.
I like your philosophy.
But it's true when you think about it, right?
But I'm glad that you mentioned the media, because I think a lot of it lies with some stereotypes that are ingrained, you know, within the media. And the goal of Equities.com is to start bringing some of these issues to light a little bit more. and cover them on a regular basis. With that, I do want to open it up to the roundtable to see if there's any questions that any of you may have. And when you ask the question, if you can identify yourselves and your affiliations. Yes.
Hi, Julianne Preston from Alvarez and Marcel, and thank you all for being here today. I love hearing you. So let's talk about the media. I have two girls who are 16 and 14. I am overwhelmed by how negative social media is and what they are being bombarded with. And I fight this every single day, and my girls are more and more honest with me about it. So I want to turn this over to this panel of very powerful women. What do you say to teenage girls who are being bombarded every single day, both by anonymous as well as people who they know, and it's boys and it's girls against those girls, which still exists because the bullies, that thing went away, it didn't. With such negativity focused on especially body image, on looks, anything but brains, how do we empower, in your opinion, girls in the face of this? It is not going to stop. So it has to be, some kind of reaction to this that buffers them from how hard this is.
Great question.
I think it's very hard. One of the things and I started this when my girls were babies, and I talked to them a lot about it, and I think we just need to tell our children that who you truly are, your beauty, and everything that makes you be you comes from within. I never tell my girls, oh, I love you because you're beautiful, I love you because you're intelligent, I love you. I love them because they are who they are. That's it. And I think we need to start educating our children in understanding that they are incredible just because they are who they are. And, my girls are very young, and I'm sure it's going to not get any better with the social media, but you just need to tell them that they need to trust who they are. They need to, you need to just open up the conversation to them very openly and say, you are a beautiful human being. You need to really stand your ground on what it is that you want, and you need to take from what you read what helps you, what benefits you, and the rest, put it aside. It's their problem. It's who they are. It's their negativity. It's not yours. I don't know what more you can do because, it's not like this is going to stop. This is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe turn it around and post positive things on social media. Have the girls, every time they get something negative, turn it around, post something positive. It might be criticized in the beginning, but at the end of the day, it's those messages that are going to come across, contrary to whatever it is that they receive.
And just to add to that, and it's something that you may, having teenage girls that are maturing, highlight that employers, what they put out there is so important, that future employers are going to go to their social media pages to assess who they are. And so whether, if they're the recipients of some negativity, I agree 100%, but protect them and their brand. And for those that have younger children, and I think I've mentioned this to Annie, of course, she's still here, that it starts at a different demographic. My daughter is 12 now, and at the age of 9, she started to ask if she could be on Instagram because all her friends apparently had started to engage in social media. And so being a parent, I sat her down and I had a long conversation with her about protecting her personal brand. And she trusted me as her mom, and I armed her with talking points on what her friends, what to say to her friends if they asked her. She's now almost 12 and a half, and she's still not on Instagram, and she's very confident and is still repeating those, those talking points. We had made an agreement, we negotiated perhaps we would reconsider at 13, but now I feel she's mature enough, and now she has been living and breathing those messages on what to tell her friends and knows, and she has told her friends, well, my mom's in the business, and she's been protecting her brand. But at the end of the day, it's like, how is that at a young age to understand how important and how much more scrutiny women have, even if they're little girls?
So, I would say quickly it's about, you're all scaring me, my girls are 1 and 3, but don't put yourself down. Like, I always have a tendency to want to say, I lost weight or I this or I that. Like, don't do that in front of your girls. Never allow them to see your self-doubt and putting yourself down. I think we need to teach boys. I have a 7-year-old boy, and every single day he knows that girls and boys are equal. He knows how to treat girls. I think that is so important, is that we're also raising our boys to know how to respect women. and girls. And I'm also involved with the Girl Scouts of New York. And they have a big leadership development program. So I recently had the pleasure of judging a pitch contest where high school girls were pitching their app ideas. They were talking about market value, sizing, time to launch, how much money they needed to raise. And those girls were so confident in who they were and in their experiences and in their intellect that counteracts it. Like, give them something to be proud of. It is not just about what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside. You mentioned that earlier. So we need to, and that's part of closing this gender gap as well, start teaching our girls that they are worth something so much more than a stupid social media post.
And also and educating the little boys. That's very important. I know I don't want to run out of time. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Natasha Garalt-Mayello. I'm a PR and media consultant, and I have the pleasure of being one of Silvia's colleagues, and I can speak for her who practices what she preaches, because we have worked together in a capacity where I was an executive editor and she was in PR, and 10 years later she reached out to me for a job. Thanks to all of you for your great insights. My question is this. I've noticed a trend, particularly in LinkedIn, where women who reach out to me will specifically say, like, hi, Natasha, I see that you are linked in to so-and-so. My company does this. I would like, an introduction for this reason. And they lay it out. They make it clear, like, I'm not just trying to sell to this person, or that, they may be interested in recruiting this person. Or they will reach out to me and say, I noticed that you have this skill. Would you like to talk about this job? However, the vast majority of my male LinkedIn friends will say things like, I noticed you know this person. Do you think you could ask them if they'd be interested in investing in my company? Or would you be willing to introduce me to this person as a potential investor? And they're putting me in a position where they're essentially asking me to do a free job that should be very high paying. How do we work on reacting to those kind of requests from men to work toward a real paradigm shift? I mean, to me, it's been fundamentally across the board that women approach me very differently than men do.
That's one of the issues. One of the best things about diversity is that two heads definitely think better than one, but two different perspectives, get a better solution for anything that you want to do. I think you need to react to the women the way that a woman would actually react to a woman. And to the men, why not be as forward as men are to you? I would love to. Let's work, on a contract to see if the deal goes through, what we can do, on that respect, the percentages. Why not be as direct to them as they are to you? Men are very forward. They go for what they want. That's okay. I'm going to do it too. Don't be afraid of telling them, fine. This is going to cost you guys. And if I can, hook you up and you make a business, then I want to be a part of it. And with the women, you just, you interact with them, the way they're interacting with you. And somewhere in the line, you can tell a woman and give her great advice on how to be a little more proactive, and I think you should.
I mean, I would say, thinking about this, I get approached like every single day, like 20 times a day. And one of the things I've learned is at the end, be equal to, kind of be the same way. Like, here, everybody asks me, and here's an agreement that I have when I do introduce, because I don't, know that person. And the people that are real will work with you. The other ones, don't even bother. Because at the end of the day, there's, with all this social media, it's like everyone feels like they can connect with everyone, but you can't trust everyone. You know what I mean? And you really want to have, before you use your contacts to introduce somebody else, I would definitely check.
And we have a question?
Yeah, it's a really short question. Katerina Ansink. I'm a guest of Jennifer Witter today, and thank you so much for being here, and this is absolutely, I wrote her while I was sitting here. I said, thank you so much for inviting me. This is amazing. My question has to do with, given this political climate that we're in, right? I opened that kettle of fish. I want to know, what is it that you think we as leaders within our communities and our, our work environments should be doing to, if I can frame this right, to help educate the younger women, your daughters, to want to grow up, to want to be lawmakers, to want to be those people that will change the way that companies work with maternity leave and parental leave, so that way they, in turn, won't have what the women in our age group face, where you have your 6 weeks, and then your husband can't take the time off, or your wife or whatever can't take the time off either. And then it's, you're gone for 6 weeks, but then you want to be gone for longer, so you tack on the extra vacation day, and then you come back and somebody else took your job because they needed to cover that client. So what do you think we should be doing to create a different place for them to work? I'm sorry, I'm trying to come up with a question as I'm saying it, but I want to know what we can do in order to help the girls that are coming up not have to be in that same environment. So how do you make government sexy for them?
I will not take this as my thought leadership, but I will share something that was recently told to me on the Ellevate podcast by one of our guests, Lauren Leaders today, and she talked a lot about politics and the influence of women when it comes to the presidential vote. So we turn out at the polls and we have a huge impact on the outcome of presidential elections, and then our impact pretty much dies. Because what ends up happening is we tend to try to drive change through volunteering our time and energy with causes and on the ground, and men are writing to Congress. They are trying to get involved in policy. They are actively involved in the political discussions. And that's where we need to see that shift. Women need to continue the momentum, writing to Congress, advocating for the bills and the changes that we want to see, getting to know our local politicians, getting involved in politics. There's 90,000 school board seats in the U.S. that are the majority men. So PTA seats are held by women, these volunteer positions. Women are volunteering their time in the PTA. The men are in the school board seats that are driving change and action. And so I think the first thing that we need to do is really be actively involved in driving that change. That's a great point.
There is a program in UN Foundation. I'm a global advocate for it, and I have seen what young girls, and they're in high school do it. It's called Girl Up. They engage in it, and they're engaging in trying to change some policies for girls around the world, not just the United States. So I think you need to find also different projects that very young girls are involved in to try to be a part of that movement. Not necessarily that they're going to be as lawyers or politicians, but they can have some participation and be proactive in what it is that they want to change. And lead by example. Parents that don't vote, children aren't going to vote. Parents are not informed, about changes that you need, and what each candidate is offering. Children are not going to, look into it. I think, leading by example is very important.
Anything else? Any other questions?
I have something. My name is Melanie Curtis, MelanieCurtis.com. I'm curious what you guys would say you would do to inspire someone you see potential in terms of rising or grabbing onto or shifting them into that positive possibility for what they're capable of. Is there anything that you do that you already know that you say to young women or any woman of any age that you see has that potential to sort of expand and grow into a role of this nature?
Great question. I always, and Madeline from my team is here, so you can tell me if this is not true, but I'm a big proponent of providing ownership, right? So everyone on my team owns something, some aspect of the business, and something that has KPIs and something that clearly is the driver of the business. May not be their area of expertise, but they can learn, and I'm there to help them learn. I see my role as a business leader is to help create and enable the best team that I can, who will then collectively and have a unified vision drive the business forward. So everyone has to have skin in the game. They have to have buy-in. and get something out of that experience. You shouldn't be going to work every day just to provide benefit for that employer. It should be getting something in return for you. If it's personal fulfillment, professional skills, or goals, each job should take you to that next level. So for me personally as a leader, I really just try to enable and the women on my team and the men on my team to have ownership, to come to me with solutions, to think of different ways to approach problems, and just be very supportive of that.
The thing I would just add to that is provide feedback and mentorship, right? And we're often so engaged on a day-to-day basis that sometimes it's something that's casual. It's, come grab a coffee for me. And really just checking in and making it a two-way street in sometimes informal ways is something that I feel very strongly about, and I'm all about paying it forward. And I feel, having had early mentors in my career, that it's definitely my duty. As founder of the Equities Women's Council, I have a personal story in that I definitely felt early on in my career in environments that were both male and female that there was a lot of that open door communication and that empowerment. When I entered into more male-dominated worlds, I didn't necessarily see that there was a lot of that mentorship towards women, right? And as I rose the corporate ladder, it got lonelier and lonelier because there's only one woman at the table, and in many cases, the senior leaders feel that, well, I've met my quota. I have one female, but I'm born and raised in New York, and I feel it should be 50-50, right? And I'm coming from that world, although I haven't been from very traditional backgrounds, parents that were born in traditional cultures. Luckily, they were very educated always to empower and to really communicate to us that we're living in a country where we should be treated all as equals. And so just giving everybody a sense of worth. I'm an adjunct professor at Hofstra University to seniors in the School of Journalism, Media Studies, and Public Relations. And Taylor is one of the students at Hofstra, actually, who's also on my team. And I tell women like Taylor these stories because I want them to be able to continue paying it forward. And I think I do, I'm a believer that it all comes back to you, and I'm hoping by building this community, which is a personal one for me, that will continue to help one another, to empower one another, to share these great stories, and bring to light issues that any of you may want me to cover or think are interesting for future discussions. So thank you.
You know what? Just one last thing. I think it's very important that you take the time to talk to them. Sometimes we think if we're not, investing our time in a large group, it's not worth it. Sometimes we think if it's only one person, it's not going to make a difference. It's a person at a time. It will make a difference. Just take the time to do it. There's something that we have not talked about that I want to put out on the table that's very important. So I was just thinking about, the girl out there, this girl, really incredible. Her name's Annie. We were having dinner one day, and she wanted me to talk to her about what I thought about different things. And she was talking about Hillary Clinton. This is a few years back. She was still Secretary of State, and she said, she really admires her. She said something that just blew me away. She said that it was women who were going to run the world. It was women who were going to control because women were more important, women were more intelligent, and it just shocked me to think that I don't think we want to raise our girls, and I did talk to Annie about this. I don't want to raise my girls thinking they're better than men. I don't want to raise my girls to do to men, and hopefully, we'll advance to gender equality way before 81 years. I don't want to be raised to think that they're better than men, or they're worth more than men, or their value is better than any men. I want to raise my girls to know that because they were born with the same rights as men, they have the exact same value, and therefore they should have the exact same opportunities as any man. And I think that's something we really need to keep on the back of our mind. Yes, we need to move forward, but we should not want to do to men what men have done to us. That's something we I hope have in the back of our minds for those of us who have girls.
And it all starts in the home, and that's a key point. You know, it's and we talked a lot about being a mom, but there's a lot more men that stay at home now, and it's really something that we should continue to bring to light. The media has done a good job, I think, here in the U.S. in covering some of those stats, but they need to do it more because it's about partnership. Like in my home, we always talk about everybody, we're all equal. You know, luckily, we're boy, girl, boy, girl. So but it's a partnership, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's what I want for my daughter. I don't want her to dominate a man, and like you said, or vice versa. And I don't want my son to be dominated by any woman either. I want him to be equal, right? But it's a partnership. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about just, you know, being aware to not come off as you say. Let's just move forward, and let's just be on the same level playing field. That's all we're saying.
Right.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm Sally Hubbard, and I have a podcast called Women Killing It. Some of the women here have been on it. In my day job, I'm a journalist and an antitrust analyst, and I work a lot in my company is actually based in D.C. So on the political front, I just wanted to add in terms of how women can have more influence in politics. It's really about having a stronger presence in corporations. Because the very sad lesson that I've learned over the last 4.5 years in this job is that corporations control Washington. Our idea of, you know, democracy by the people is really not the reality of the way that our government is working these days, okay? The politicians are very, very beholden to their donors, their whoever. All these, one hard lesson that I've learned is all of these think tanks, all these professors that you think are independent, they're all on some corporation's payroll. So the way to have the most influence until the system changes, the way to have the most influence in Washington is to have the most influence in the corporate world. And the other thing on politics, I just wanted to give a shout out to Zephyr Teachout, who's currently running for Congress, upstate New York. She is absolutely amazing, and she's in a very tight race right now. So if anyone is looking to support a woman, she is spectacular on so many levels. She's been driving her campaign all by small donors. Her opponents, they're neck and neck, and he has been funded primarily by super PACs and still supports Trump. She's an advocate for so many women's issues, so she's Zephyr Teachout. She ran for the mayorship as well, big tech guy. For governor, right. She challenged Cuomo, yeah, and she did it in like 3 months with no funding. She took a huge, in the primary, the Democratic primary against Cuomo. Yeah. So Zephyr Teachout, check her out.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. And I actually do want to hear from there's only, I think, 1 or 2 men in the room. Hi, Michael. Actually, Mike McDonald is Equities.com's Chief Operating Officer and Chief Technology Officer, whom I've had the pleasure with not only working at Equities, but we were colleagues at NASDAQ for a number of years. Mike, do you have anything to add to this dynamic discussion?
No, I mean, first of all, I think this is an amazing forum today. I think the 3 of you are truly amazing in what you said. I think the question I have, you know, having been, you know, in some of those boys' club situations as a male manager, what would you say to male managers like myself as to things we can do to better have opportunities for women?
Great question.
I think it's just speaking out loud and you know, just allowing women, giving them the opportunity to be a part of all those conversations that you have with men. Because sometimes you just talk about it, but you don't really open it up to where women can really feel welcome and to belonging to that part. You know, always that it's incredible, you know, there's all these laws and all these principles that companies or people have and they're, you know, plastered on the walls. But it's a head really making sure that they get implemented and they go trickle down and all those things are passing. So it's great to talk about it, but it's better if you actually, to the invitation, you open up the space, you really welcome them to be a part of it. You mentor them, you not literally take them by the hand, but, you know, be a part of really inviting them to be a part of that conversation.
I would just add one other thing, Vicki, from Alvarez would be on the women's front. I think it's important that you also ask to be a part of the conversation. This is kind of in the theme, but it was fascinating to me that a lot of that chatter that goes on, men just don't even think that you're even of interest because you've never communicated, you never shared, you never even, suggest it.
And that's proven in that statistic.
Right.
Lindsay study.
Yeah, but you throw your hat in the ring. Even if it's not today, it could be 3 years from now. But what would it take for me to get there? And I think that's kind of the thing. It's like a two-way street. Ask if you're interested, but also we should empower ourselves.
It's very hard. Women need to speak up. Women need to raise their hands. Women need to be a part of it. And if they can't, women need to help other women speak up, to talk, to say what's in their head, to say what they want, but to also say when they don't want something.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not one statue in Central Park of a woman. It's all men. And it's just that women don't have it. I mean, not like I want one, right? All I have is sex. No, but all the reason why I know that, you don't know these things, but men have no problem saying, let me have it, right? And that's what women need to kind of be more vocal. And they have to start saying, I want it, right? Because if you want something, you'll go after it. So the more you're passionate about it and you start thinking, I can have, blah, 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 that changes the whole mindset of where you can go in life.
And one last thing, one of the things that I also tell women, especially the women that are invited to, be part of panels, whether they're talking about the economy or health or education or anything, they sit with usually a larger group of men than women, usually a woman or two at the top, at the most, and they go out there and talk about education and politics just like a man. Will not have been invited to that. They know that it does not matter what issue we're going to discuss. My issue is going to be women inside the economy, women as part of education, women as part of health, their ills, what they can bring to the table, how we can make that happen. We sometimes want to be a part of, being accepted with the guys that are being part of the conversation instead of taking that leap into that mystery of the unknown, and talk about women on these issues. Women are involved in every single one of the issues, and they have things that are not positive. They can, provide a lot of info and light, into anything that we talk about. And I think that's very important that we need to understand. It's okay. Don't be embarrassed. Go out there and talk about women's issues, every time you get an opportunity to do so.
And very quickly, I'm Jennifer Witter. I own the Borland Group, which is a public relations agency. I am a passionate advocate for women in the workplace, and I also do a lot of speaking engagements. And I'm also a passionate member of Ellevate. And in my speaking engagements, I talk about women in the workplace. I always say, no one will know how great you are until you tell them. And with women, we don't say how great we are. We always share it with the team, we. And one time I was talking to a male client of mine who was saying, Jennifer, you did a great job and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And they said, we, da-da-da, my team, da-da-da. And he said it again, and I said the same thing. And he goes, Jennifer, say I. Okay, so we need to go out there, create the accomplishments, and own them. And then one other thing, and I'm big into language in the workplace, women have to stop using certain language. Okay, stop saying you're sorry. Unless you burn down the building, okay, don't say you're sorry. Do not use the word just because it qualifies what you are saying. So very quickly, don't say sorry, don't say just, don't raise your hand in meetings. If you have a question, don't say, may I ask a question? Ask the question. And then own all of your hard-earned accomplishments by saying, I did it, and I did a great job. I love it.
I know we have one other question before we run out of time.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Aswell-Cobb, and I produce the Speak Up Women Conference that's held at the United Nations. And you're all speaking my language. One of the things that a lot of the research and evidence shows, I'm sure it may show up in the McKinsey report, but I've seen others, is that women look for permission. Mm-hmm. And I think Jennifer's comments validate that. The other thing that happens to a lot of women is they project judgment. That the people they're speaking to either will judge what they say or will judge how they say it. And those are things that we need to let go of, because in our efforts to speak up, we're not just speaking up for women's issues. I actually disagree with that. We're speaking up for all issues. We're just a voice that needs to be added to the conversation with confidence and competency about the things that we care about. Because when we speak up, it's important that we end up impacting other people. And as a matter of fact, we impact ourselves and the environments that we're in. So I find that your comments are really great. I also find that we need to do it not only for women, but for everybody whose lives we touch when we speak up, because it matters, and it makes a difference in our lens count. But the only way that it counts is that we need to speak up so that we can be heard, so we can contribute to the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And since we're running out of time, I just want to highlight a couple of housekeeping issues. We've talked about so many horrific topics related to women's issues. Love to hear from you if you have thoughts on other interesting women's efforts or gender equality themes that you think Equities should focus on or cover. If you know of any other organizations like Alvarez and Marsal that would be interested in sponsoring a discussion, we're going to try to do these quarterly. And if you know of women, not only in New York, we're building a national community in other major cities that you think would be wanting to be added to our distribution and to our stories, definitely make sure that you speak to me or Taylor or Mike, and that you send us an email. And then lastly, since this is Communications Week in New York City, we're very happy that this event coincided with a growing week for New Yorkers, and we're doing another similar event, but it's focused on financial communications and innovation, which are really some of the key hallmarks of Equities.com. We're doing it in partnership with Compro, and I'm going to have Faye Shapiro, who's publisher of Compro, kind of highlight tomorrow's event, and the event, if you are interested in stopping by or being a part of the webinar. Okay?
Thank you, Silvia. We invite all of you to join us. Tomorrow's event, as Silvia said, is part of Communications Week. This is the 4th year that communicators in the different corporate communication sectors, including financial, public relations, marketing, social media, and investor relations, come together to talk about innovation and how we are going to revolutionize communication as we move forward into 2017. Tomorrow, we're taking a deep dive into financial communications and innovation with speakers ranging from Investopedia to Gabriel Kirkos, thank you, who will be talking about innovation, the fantastic Tuscan Gun chef, and a panel who will look at corporate messaging strategies. Who is disrupting the traditional communications pattern? And that panel will be hosted by Annie Massa, who I think is still here.
I'm sure she left. I think she'll be here.
Okay. So it is free to attend. It is being hosted at CME Group downtown. If you email me or go to Compro or Equities, you can register for the live event or the webcast, which will be powered by Onstream. So hope you join us tomorrow.
So again, thank you to Alvarez and Marsal. Thank you, Onstream Media, and I'd like you all to join me in thanking these fantastic. And hope you join us again for another discussion. Thank you, everyone.